Hello and welcome to On the Hunt, the Foxcatcher preview show. My name's Julian Valence, joined as always by a person who's up in Sydney, Nick Ashman. G'day, Nick.
Guess who I sat next to at a lunch yesterday? I had a host a function out at Randwick, and then I sat down next to the great David Boone.
Yeah, didn't you?
And I finally got this. Maybe, yeah, did you remember all those stories, the big story you heard about him setting the record?
Was that
you wanted to know if it was true?
56 or something?
52 or 53, 53. I can't even remember from yesterday.
Yeah.
I got to ask him firsthand if it's true. Yes, it is. He drank 52 or 53 beers on the way to England back in the 80s or early 90s, I think it was. So he said that there was a big contest going on. Lily and all that had set all these records of 30 or something. It was like 36, and he got past 36, and he just went, stuff it, I'm going to set a new mark that no one gets.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine any of the Australian cricketer teams actually even in the players right now actually even drink, let alone getting anywhere near that record. Fair income. What a group that is. Anyway, we're digressing. Hey, let's get into the track intel for this Saturday because we're going to put 3 tracks up. So we're going to do Flemington, Scone and Doomben, obviously, for the feature race, which will be the Doomben 10,000, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I'll start at Flemington. Rail out 4 metres the entire circuit. I think we'll be on a good 4 throughout. No issue there. Now, we've got the northerly back, but it just might not have that much impact. But it's that 15 to 20 kilometres. Probably needs to be a little bit more to have it impact. Where does that sort of situate? Well, it's a headwind into that sweeping home turn. We had it the last time we raced at Flemington, and it creates this sort of spinnaker lane sort of out into the middle of the track. It's really weird to try and be specific about it, but it gives horses midfield, worse than midfield, to get out, find backsides, and then absolutely launch. And it is like if you're watching the skiffs, Alabache, etc., and they just seem to steam down the middle of the track. Anyway.
During the middle of the cricket, when Booney was scoring his ton, you'd go to the lunch break and Richie would go, let's go for a cruise for Chew. And all of a sudden it would be Alabache.
Correct.
18-foot skiffs.
100%.
All played by you.
100% correct. The straight, look, middle to wide lanes, middle to inside lanes is the advantage in terms of the numbers. But I'm just a little bit like open-ended about that one in terms of I don't think if you've drawn wide, it's going to be a disadvantage. But don't be too worried about drawing inside up the straight. We've spoken about that a lot in detail. And now with the out 4 metres, good 4. They're good numbers anyway. Circle, pretty even. Backmarkers are low percentage play and as are leaders. So the bookends are the worry there. So especially with this northerly around the circle, I probably don't want to be leading. Not saying you can't win, but just that little bit lower percentage play than other racetracks around Victoria. That's Flemington. Now, Scone, there's a bit going on there, mate, because it's a 2-day carnival, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I'm heading up there shortly after this, and I'm going to walk the track when I first get to Scone. So I'll put out some intel on our socials for Friday's Scone Cup meeting. And then, look, I'm in a marquee on Friday afternoon, but I'm going to do my best to go out and have a look at the track after the last race and hopefully provide some intel for Saturday. Looking at some history and looking at sort of what's happened over the last few years, it just does depend a lot on the weather.
Yeah.
When it's just a dry day, dry deck into dry deck, the second day gets a little bit more leaderish, particularly towards the back end of the card. The pace of each race tends to increase, so you need a fit horse that can take up a forward position and just keep sort of finding under pressure. But there is sort of up to sort of 3 mil or so forecast over the next 48 hours. Now, if that arrives during race day and that inside gets a little bit of wear and tear, then you might see them getting further away from the inside part of the track. So very difficult to assess where Saturday's meeting is going to end up. Let's go a little bit further north to Brisbane, though, and we've got, of course, the Group 1 meeting up there, the Doomben 10,000.
Yes.
Of course, at Doomben. Now, what we're hearing there is plenty of rain around in Brisbane. We're already deep into the soft range. There's more rain to come. There's a fair chance we're going to end up in a heavy track here, Jules. So what we've been told is that it's going to be a bit up and off. You don't necessarily want to be swooping late, but you don't want to be down on the inside part of the track. The first 2 lanes should prove inferior, and you won't see too many winners, if any at all, use those inside lanes. And then from there, it's sort of steadily gets better as you get out. There's really no need to get much wider than about lane 10. I think I've got a note here to say that when the rail's true, you very rarely get many winners wider than lane 10. So
Yep.
I'd be expecting the bulk of the winners to sort of be between lanes 3, 4, out to about lanes 9 and 10, and not too far back in the run.
All right, love that. So that's the intel for 3 tracks. Make sure you do follow us on the socials, all those platforms that you are on, whether it be X, Instabang, obviously YouTube. You can get all the stuff there. Make sure you subscribe and follow there, because Nick's going to obviously do an update for Scone, and God knows what we might actually get delivered to us on Friday night if he's been in a marquee. So that might be just worth sticking around, whether the intel, forget the intel, just everything else that might be coming through with that could be absolutely elite. Hey, let's get to the Fox factors this week. I want to touch on something here, Nick, and I'll get your thoughts on the back of it when I finish, is just that we're now in a stage where I hear many people who enjoy punting, and they'll say, okay, from May onwards till, say, July, I just don't punt, especially in Victoria, because wet tracks, they just don't want to be part of it. They think there's too many variables. The results are, a little bit too much out there that they don't want to do it. And I find it really an interesting comment, because I get it, absolutely. But I feel like the reason why we do have differing results is not so much because of the wet tracks. And I think we get a perfect example of it this week, is that it's more we get the variations in track conditions. So last week or 2 weeks ago, and especially coming off the Warrnambool Carnival, we've had horses that are going to be running on Saturday at Flemington on a good track, coming from really rain-affected tracks. So heavy range at Warrnambool. I think, last week, a couple of weeks ago, in the metro area, we've been on a genuine soft 7 type of track. And that's where the variance comes in results for me. And so I think we have to be mindful of that. And we're going to get it on Saturday, that you get horses that explode or do a really big number on a really wet track, and they just don't back it up when we get to this dry conditions like we're going to get on Saturday at Flemington, and vice versa. They go really well on a dry track, and then the next week or the next time they run in 2 weeks' time, they get this wet track. And it just throws up these really odd results. So people go, you know what, it's too hard, because they think it's because of the winter months. It's because we're getting the different track conditions. That's, for me, why I think it happens. And I've just got the numbers I talked about this with Hutchie on Monday in the review show, Pandora's Fox. Just the Warrnambool numbers from 2025, which was on a really wet track, and their next start. And there was 227 runners at their next start from the Warrnambool Carnival, and there was 30 winners from that 227, so going at a 13% win strike rate, which, if you look at when a really strong carnival, is fairly low compared to if you did it in some other sort of situations. And then horses that won at Warrnambool, and there was 22 horses of that. Now, I'm only doing the flat horses like I did on Monday, and there was only one winner, Cleo Cat, 4% win strike rate and only 4 placings. I think it comes down to, yes, being set for a certain race, but it's more for me that really wet track, and then you're coming onto a really firm deck. You got any opinions about this, Nico?
Yeah, I think, look, first of all, wet to dry holds true pretty much anywhere in the country when horses go from heavy to dry tracks. And you quite often will see the market spit a horse that's posted a good figure last out on the heavy, goes to dry, and it's, 260 out to 380. You think, what's happened here? It's just simply because they don't like the heavy to dry. Dry to heavy, not too bad. Heavy to dry, definitely a massive negative. So, and then just what you sort of touched on, Warrnambool's the biggest country carnival in Australia. It's a 3-day carnival. It's a lot of hype. Trainers throw the kitchen sink at their horses, particularly certain stables, to get them up and ready for it. And so the horse has already hit its peak, and they're generally not Group 1 horses, other than I think you had that Axar for Weary a few years ago, just ran through the roof.
Yeah.
But most of the time, they're just sort of those late benchmark, sort of maybe Group 3 type horses.
Yeah.
And, when they get the kitchen sink thrown at them, they can usually only peak for a week or 2 in their preparations. Yep. It's the top grade horses that can hold a peak for 4 or 5 runs, not usually the ones that go to the bull.
Yeah. So I think that's just important to take into account over these next few months when you are betting, because that wet track to dry track or dry track to wet track does throw out some variance in the results. Hey, you've got some numbers around some jockeys and camps for Brisbane and for Scone. So you just want to roll through them for the punters?
Yeah, I'll start with Brizzy, Doomben 10,000. Just thought I'd look at who's hot at the moment. Ben Melham, obviously one of the best riders in the country, always can back him with a lot of confidence. Last 100 rides, his finishing position has been exceeding the market by 45%, so he's going well above what he normally does. And then Hawks Racing, who, look, this was once a massive stable and they've probably had a few lean years. I mean, they picked up the Blue Diamond with Devil Knight, who we're going to talk about in a moment. Yeah. And they're still capable of winning the big races, but they're not quite the dominant force that they once were. That said, their last 100 runners finishing position exceeding the market by 21%. They're having a good run of late.
Yep.
That combination, Millum and Hawks, which you don't see together too often, will combine with Devil Knight in the Doomben 10,000. We'll do our preview on the other side of this upcoming break, so we'll talk about him there. Just at Scone, I thought, let's go and have a look at who goes well at Scone. Best of the locals in terms of the trainers. There's some pretty good trainers up there. Brett and Georgie Kavanagh, their finishing position exceeding the market on their home track by 70%, so you can back them with confidence. The market still hasn't caught up to them yet, and I think that's because a lot of the Sydney trainers still take horses up to Scone, but on their home track, they're pretty deadly, that combination. In terms of your best jockey, looking at Zach Lloyd. He goes up there 7. He's only had 26 rides, 7 wins, so good strike rate, finishing position exceeding market by 56%. He'll be there on Saturday as well. So maybe have a good look at him when you're playing all of your bets on Saturday afternoon.
Beautiful. There's some intel for the Fox Factors for multiple tracks. All right, Nico, let's get to the feature race for the weekend, and it is up in Queensland. It's the Doomben 10,000, and just from a points bet market perspective, you've got Jimmysstar, who sort of is the top of the pops here. Private Eye's been really well supported since final fields were declared. Grafter Burners, not bad first up, second up here. Napoleonic still not in the race right now as we speak, so still needs one more scratching for Napoleonic to get into the race. Devil Knight, really interesting horse for me. And then we get out to sort of a horse like Beedman, and then you got Warney as well from a market perspective. Where do we start here, mate? Do we start obviously with the favourite Jimmysstar? I mean, he doesn't feel like Doomben would be his track. In saying that, he's got an outstanding record at a track like Caulfield, with probably profiles a little bit similar to, say, Doomben. Doomben might be a little bit more tighter, but he has to go back, you would think, from that draw. What do we make of him? Where's he at this prep?
Yeah, I think the key to this race is you've really got to drill down on that speed map, because Jimmy holds the key. If he can get in with a trail and he gets the right kind of tempo up front, then he's too good for these horses. That's the bottom line. Now, it does come with a caveat that we could end up well into the heavy range on Saturday. Believe it or not, he's never actually raced on a heavy track. So we can't really determine how he's going to go. He has raced on soft tracks plenty of times. His last 2 soft track runs have been on soft 7, which, of course, is as close as you can get to a heavy. I thought he was probably just too wide in the TJ Smith Stakes, trying to make his run too deep. The sort of the profile, if you like, of the winners and place getters was much closer to the rail, even though it was an off-rail day. He was out in lane 19. Just probably gave too much ground getting out there. In terms of the map for this race, look, I actually thought Zarastro might try and cross and lead, and that's because I think the 4 horses with the most natural speed in the race, not saying that these are the horses that, necessarily are the only ones that go for the front. Zarastro, Private Harry, Grafter Burners, and Uncommon James. Rothfire is good, but he's got more of that sustained speed about him. He's not quite as nippy. Now, the thing with Zarastro is he's the horse that's got the form of those 4 of that quartet up to 1350. Uncommon James, Grafter Burners, Private Harry probably want a more softer 1200. So if you're on Zarastro like Daniel Moore is, you're probably going to go to the front and keep him rolling a bit. That means that those 3 horses behind you, or maybe Uncommon James sits to you outside, they're going to have to chase you the whole way. And with an ounce of luck, they drop off, and that then forces the rest of the field to come around them. If they do stack 3 wide in this race, which I think they will, I've sort of met Uncommon James maybe 3 wide, no cover. Grafter Burners kicking up, holding that OSL position.
Yep.
Even if he doesn't, I think Rothfire ends up 3 wide, no cover. And I think Jimmysstar can possibly drop down onto his back. He's probably going to have to be ridden a little bit quicker than he normally does, but not much quicker to grab the back of Rothfire. He's either going to be 3 wide, 2 back, or 3 wide, 1 back with a bit of cover. And I still think that's a pretty good spot for him to be. If you sort of said to me, what's the ideal spot for Jimmysstar in a sprint race over 1,200 metres, I'd say running line, whether it's 2 wide or 3 wide, with cover, midfield, maybe touch forward of if he can hold that spot. That's ideal for Jimmy. That's what I think he gets on Saturday. The gun runs, as they like to say in media circles for mine, probably Devil Knight and Private Eye. I do a bit of work with proven thoroughbreds. I certainly won't be suggesting that he goes and tries to get into that speed battle. I think he's better off second run, 1,200 metres coming out of a fast run race, heavy track or deep into the soft. I think he's probably better off positioning just behind that tempo. But I think him and Devil Knight get the gun runs.
Yeah, Devil Knight's come back really good this prep. I mean, I thought, it won the Blue Diamond, but wasn't a horse I ever really found. But I think this prep, it's sort of really come on and getting to a level where it makes it really competitive in these kinds of races. Just want to get your thoughts on the still emergency Napoleonic. I know we've been sort of a big fan of this horse, did a massive number at Moonee Valley, I think on Cox Plate Day or Cox Plate Night, whenever it was. Where do you make of him? Can he win this race if he gets in?
Yeah, look, probably. I'd still rather see a horse like him, under a slightly different weight scale. Just he's got a domestic rating of 103 versus 117 of Jimmysstar. So from that point of view, he doesn't really do himself too many favours under the weight scale, but he's got plenty of ability. He's only had one soft track run, and that was in that Paul Perry Newcastle race back in, I think, March last year. He finished second to a horse called Next Gen, who ironically goes around at Scone on Saturday afternoon. But he's got plenty of ability, I know that. Just, again, he's got to get in. I think if he gets in, he probably drops down sort of not far off where Jimmysstar is. And we're going to find out where Napoleonic is. I mean, he's a pretty good horse. But to be honest, I'm sort of with you. I think Devil Knight's definitely a bet at around that $10, $11 mark. Yep. Amazingly, he's only seen a soft track once in his life, and it was a soft 5, and it was in the San Domenico. But he copped a bit of interference coming out of the barriers, and it was a bit of a forget run behind Raging Force, who did run good numbers that day. So, and I'm with you. I think he's come back. He got that win as a 2-year-old in the Blue Diamond. He went to the Wilderness for a bit. He's definitely back now, and he gets his chance on Saturday. I'll be backing him and Jimmysstar. I did have something on Private Eye at the top of the week. I think at $12 or $13. I'm happy to let him go now around the $6 or $7 mark.
Yeah, I think he's found his price now, Private Eye, but definitely if you secured those early prices, that was a nice price to secure.
One more horse that we've got to talk about is Skybird, I think.
Yeah.
Look, the way they rode her 2 starts ago in the TJ Smith, I think's how they probably got a rider on Saturday. Go back and ride through the field. I think she can circumnavigate this field and beat them. But if some of the other runners get flush wide on the bend as the sort of on paces go looking for that better ground 3, 4, 5 off the fence, and they have to come too wide, she is the kind of horse that could cut the corner, then sort of just move out 2 or 3 horses and weave her way through the field. She's got that darting turn of foot. We saw that in the Lightning a couple of years ago. She was very good over 1,200 metres in the TJ Smith on a soft 7. This is the right conditions for her. I would have probably had something on her if she'd gone straight from the TJ Smith to this.
Yeah.
Just the trip down to Adelaide, the run there, now back up to Brisbane. I'm a little bit like, I don't know if I like that for her, but very mindful she gets the right conditions, and I think she'll just sit last and try and pinball through the field.
She is just a brilliant wet tracker. So, and we speak about this a lot. It's almost when you get to that wet track, they're going to get to that number that they've done before, whether they've had a couple of outs or whatever, been on good tracks. But get back to that number on wet tracks. And if she does that on Saturday, she is right within this race. Warney's another horse that I'm very interested in. Don't know if this is his right setup. I don't know if it is, but he's going really well. His first up run, I thought, was very good. Hey, we've got the 3-year-old race that is a perfect lead up now into the Derby, which is 2 weeks away. You're a big fan of Matthias. I don't looks like he hasn't nominated for the race, so he falls by the wayside. But there's a couple of other interesting horses, including the horse that never got into the South Australian Derby that was going to be favourite, Accidental Bid.
Yeah, and look, it's D-Day for him. This is where he gets the chance to prove himself. Providence is the second favourite. Providence is, look, he's a handy horse. I don't want to sort of speak ill of him because he's a Group 2 place getter, Group 3 place getter, but he's never won a stakes race in his life. That's the bottom line. He was very good behind Matthias last time out and probably could have finished even a little bit closer in the Frank Packer plate. So he's there. He's a good benchmark to use. If you can't beat Providence, then you're probably not at that top level. I think that's fair to say. So Accidental Bid's probably going to get that wet conditions. You were talking about him definitely being a really good mutter. and whether or not he could show that on a dry track in the SA Derby. He didn't get the chance to prove himself. So I think he gets his wet conditions. Yeah, he's probably going to have to use some energy at some point from that wide gate, whether it's early, whether it's late to get into the race. We'll leave that up to Johnny Allen. But he's got to win this race to be a chance of winning the Derby in a couple of weeks' time, because these horses, they're just all a bit the same. They're sort of okay horses, but there's nothing here that's that good. What I will say, Jules, is if you're playing the futures markets for the Queensland Derby and they get the rain, just be wary that if the Derby's run on a dry track, going to go back to that thing we spoke about at the top of the show. This is going to be heavy 8, heavy 9 onto a dry. And I've got this pace being pretty genuine throughout. So a bit of a gut buster on a bottomless track, not the ideal prep run for a Derby. So just be wary when the markets all fluctuated, the futures markets, as they love to do. If Accidental Bid comes out and wins by 2 1/4 lengths and everyone goes, this is it, and he's $1.25 in futures markets, because aren't they great value these days, in the Derby, I'd be still looking just elsewhere and maybe go, right, I'm going to take that on because I don't like the setup. Before I come back to you, there is a race 7, the run before, the race before the Doomben 10,000, the Chairman's Handicap. There's a bit of lead up towards the Brisbane Cup. There's a horse down towards the bottom, number 15, So You Are, as you might have guessed by So You Think. He ran a really good number last time out, Jules, on a bottomless or pretty wet track at Eagle Farm. He drops down in weight off that. So as we love, stayers off a big number, dropping down in weight, getting in their same favoured wet conditions. I think this horse is a really interesting runner, and I think you've got to have something on him around that $5.56 mark.
The people that are complaining about futures markets are the punters, and I get it. And you know whose fault it is? It is the punters, because they wanted everything. They wanted the all-in. I mean, they wanted the pre-nom. They wanted the insurance. They wanted, if their horse got scratched at the barrier, to somehow get their cash back. And you know what? The bookies unfortunately created a rod for their own back by saying, yep, we'll pander to you and we'll do that. Just make them all in. Bad luck if you do your cash, and then you're going to get back into the relevance of what futures betting was when they were all hundreds and you could actually make some money out of it. But now the only people to blame are the punters themselves, because they wanted. And eventually that's what they're left with. All right, Nico, let's get into our sets. Obviously, I'll kick us off with Flemington this week. Found this a tricky card. I liked the card. I think it was really good, but they were competitive races. Good to see a horse like Concord Connie back. It was outstanding, winning at Flemington, big number, plus 9.5. But, you know, it's obviously not going to be a betting situation there with, I think it's already been $1.50 into $1.30, but got to see that camp and that sort of that whole system, be able to get that horse to repeat. And obviously then it is a group horse in the making, no doubting that. All right, enough of that. Race 3, number 12, Kadeem. Big price about this horse. I'm trusting what it did first up at Seymour, just a monster number. And it's sort of, if you go back to its 3-year-old career, you know, it had races against Treasure of the Moment and big numbers. I reckon Dom Sutton might have this horse back going. I reckon it might be back to its best. And if it is, well, you know, the price that they're spitting out, I'm happy to be with. I think it'll run really well for us each way. It's an interesting draw. It's a horse that usually can roll forward. I sort of, from this gate, I don't want it to, and the way that the weather's going to be with the wind and that possible spinnaker lane, I'm happy for them to find a backside, get cover, don't push forward, and then just present itself. And I think it's going to run really well for us. So, yeah, massive number that I'm trusting first up, albeit at Seymour. I think it can take it to town and be really competitive in that race. Race 5, again, really hot race here up the straight. This horse is drawn middle, Marcept. Just loved what it did. I mean, it took Extra Galactic to run it down, I think, first up. We know what Extra Galactic's gone on to do. Obviously, probably just about should have won last week, the Goodwood. And then just went to a maiden and knocked off its maiden. Again, monster number, but I mean, the number before it was big. Starts at $1.10, yes. It can sit on speed, absorb pressure. It's a good race. It's a bloody good race. There's some nice horses in it, but I just like this horse. I think it puts itself into a higher percentage play than a few of the others in the race. So I'm happy to be with it on the minimum weight. I think that's a positive for it. And in race 9, which is the last race, there's 2 horses, but the price has gone on Mr. Blunt. They put up, one of the joints put up, you know, around $3.50, $3.60, and that was gone within not many seconds, and now it's sort of into that 240, 250, which is about its right price. The number's massive from the last start race, but I'm going to take Skipper's Canyon here. It was behind Mr. Blunt. It just got into a position where Mr. Blunt had all the momentum and the way the wind was and enjoyed that Spinnaker lane, and Skipper's Canyon was back on the inside, just sandwiched in between horses and never just got really clear. I loved its last 100 metres. It's third up now. I know this distance range is no worries. Old figures, yep, brilliant. Craig Williams on, really good. I think it gets last crack at Mr. Blunt. I think Mr. Blunt's going to be in front at the 250, and I'm just hoping Craig can stalk it and have a last crack. Happy to back Skipper's Canyon, but obviously almighty scared of Mr. Blunt. I think they're the two in that race. That's the Flemington set. Let's get to Scone, mate.
Okay, Scone race 1. Let's kick it off. Allegro Miss. We've backed her last time out. I had something on her first up. She looks like she's going to peak on Saturday. J4 jumps back in the saddle. Yet to miss a place in 3 third up runs. You're getting around that $20 mark about her. Average draw, she probably goes back. She's going to need a little bit of luck, but at that price, I'm happy to play each way. Moving on to race 2, Autumn King. Shout out to Nuno. One of my mates, part owns this horse.
Nuno.
I thought 2 runs ago, he'll be up there too when I get up there. 2 runs ago, the horse was really good sectionally late. Late section was comparable with Regal Award. Regal Award didn't go on with it. This horse went up, struck a heavy track in the Group 2 Queensland Guineas, comes all the way back now to a Class 3 locally trained galloper, around the $5 mark, something there. Then we go to race 7. This is an interesting filly, 3-year-old filly, owned by Greg Kolovos from the Piero fame, Agatha. She was good on debut. She was heavily backed. Both times she started odds on. Best last 6-4-2 of the day at Kensington first up when she won by an absolute panels. Then go to race 8. Your man's horse, Golden Strand.
Yep.
Bit of a yuck draw, but drops sharply in weight. If the track stays dry, he can travel deep with cover from that shoot start with only a half turn into the straight and still be competitive. Make sure you have something on Dollar Magic in that race. She's a good fresh horse, and 1,100 metres is her trip. And then last but most definitely not least, Surfing Bird. Bird is the word. I think she's a Group 2 mare at the very least, and she'll be winning this race on Saturday.
All right, love that, Surfing Bird, and that is your best. I think my best will be Marcept as well. So you enjoy your time up at Scone with Nuno and Og Monster and all those guys up there, mate, and you have a fabulous time. I will see you Monday to review Scone and also Doomben 10,000, which will be a ripper race. See you, pal.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.